been playing about with it, so it should be a little bit smoother with the. Hey guys, so if you've joined us live on Facebook, we've been playing about with the software, so hopefully we shouldn't have any more problems in lurking through the interaction between Zoom and Facebook. But this is Stan Mediri.
Hello. Hi, Steve.
Tonight we're going to be talking about recovery, aren't we?
Yes, we're talking recovery as a component of performance in sports, and what role it plays, why it is important, and why it is probably is, an overlooked and underrated part of training to prepare for performance.
Brilliant. So what's why can't people just keep running and running?
Well, because it's all very well, to just keep running and running, but you see, the body works with cycles, and to a certain degree, after a body has expended itself, it needs to recover so that it can give you more. It can give you more of what you desire from it. It cannot give you basically, the body's capacity is limited, and so it needs to be renewed from time to time for it to meet the demands of your sport or your running. That's why you cannot just be running forever.
Now, I think that might need to be explained to a few people, because I do see a lot of people out there who end up getting injured as a result of overtraining. So that's where people just don't have enough recovery, isn't it, Sam?
Indeed, because I think one of the problem areas, with running and sport is the fact that it sits and it emanates from an individual's passion to take part in that sport. And sometimes that, when it is not checked with a bit of structure to the training, that can in itself also, become a cause for people just to not to look at that side of, of their activity. And yet recovery is really critical in terms of the adaptations that they are looking for in training.
Yeah.
Unless the body is given time to recuperate and respond to the stimulus load in training, the body will just underperform. It will underperform under that load, and people will then start wondering why their times are not getting down lower, or why the performance was lethargic in a particular match. It's because the body cannot give them what they need, because it is at that point, most likely at that moment in time, the body is suppressed. It's in a state of suppression from the training load that they would have, applied on it. And so it needs time to recover from that, and therefore bring about an adaptation necessary then to deal with the next challenge that they would place on it.
Excellent. So if you've just joined us live on Facebook and you're wondering what the hell are these guys talking about, we're actually talking about runners and running recovery. It's a really interesting component. If you've got any questions and you want to ask us about injuries, running recovery, then just fire them out, and we'd love to be able to help you with those, and we'll try and get you a logical answer with either myself or Stan to some information. But Stan, I would assume that people have a reserve or threshold that they can get to with the amount of running that they can perform at any given time, right?
Yeah, indeed, they do. Yeah, each one has got that threshold, with their running, and that threshold is something that would have come as a result of adaptation within their load. By adaptation, I mean the body's response to the demands that they place on it during the running. For instance, they've gone out for 3K as a start. The body is going to be shocked with that level of amount of work, but it's going to cope because the body wants to survive. It will accept that this is what this chap wants to do. So the body is going to adapt to that one and come up with a level of fitness necessary to meet that demand that they would have placed on it, which is 3K. But then if they have to go and run a 10K, when really the body has just adapted to a 3K, then the body would find itself struggling with that sort of thing because they've gone beyond the threshold that they have invested in.
Yeah.
So it's important to progress that threshold, incrementally. That's where the importance of structuring their runs and structuring the whole training program comes in.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So I think there's a lot of lessons to learn in life with looking at runners, because they're quite an interesting bunch, aren't they, when it comes to long distance runners and the types of stresses that are put on them during an athletic event amount to a huge amount of strain on their bodies, but also the result of that is they build their resilience, so they actually toughen up and they become more adapted to that particular environment, don't they?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, indeed they do. And I think the key point there with that adaptation is to make it structured. Too many times runners, they create resilience almost from unstructured training. And therefore, they put a lot of strain on the body with that sort of approach, because the body would best adapt itself with a very progressive, well-planned training program where the load is progressively increased. And within that trough of increasing the load, there are moments of recovery to allow the body, all parts of the body, including the psychological component of the body, that has got to be allowed also to develop together with the body to meet the demands that they are placing on it. Yes, it is. The body is a wonderful machine. It will respond to whatever challenges that we put before it. But there are better ways of doing that so that there is longevity, one, in that activity, and also there is performance in that activity. By performance, I'm meaning the quality of performance keeps going higher, and to meet the different challenges that they may encounter in different races.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, very interesting. So, Stan, what kind of stresses can be placed on the body, in your opinion, when it comes to the human body, not just runners, but the human body? What kind of stresses are there?
Oh, yes. The stresses would be in, the body. If we take the body in its major components, the stresses could be, physiological stresses. So the body's physiological systems, each one of them, every one of them can be stressed by the amount of load that you are placing on it. They are the obvious stresses there, which is the muscular, because it's a neuromuscular activity, running or playing sport. So that will be the first point of call, or as it were, that will manifest or evidence any stress that has been put there. But there's also the skeletal system. The body's skeleton can only take so much physical stress on itself before it starts responding negatively. If those stresses exceed a certain threshold. The body's joints, they also, much as they can absorb a lot of pressures that are put on it, they can only do so much. If that exceeds a certain threshold that a runner has got, depending on their age, depending on their level of fitness, the body is going to react negatively and evidence itself that these stresses here are way too much. They are way beyond what it can handle. Yeah. It also, the body can reflect stresses from the mental side of it. If there's not enough recovery that has been put into the body, into the body's mind, into the body, then the mind itself also can easily reflect that with a lot of anxiety. There can be emotional issues. Athletes come for training and there's not the emotional drive, if you like. The body wants to go, but the spirit, if you like, is not there. It's because something else there is overloaded, and it really just needs to be offloaded so the body can get back to doing, what the body can do. So the stresses are within every facet of a human being, really, coming from a performance standpoint.
Yeah. So going into training, would you have any suggestions for anyone to, I mean, it seems obvious, right? Don't run if you're stressed, but there's a lot of people out there that are running when they're stressed already. What do you think the long-term implications of that are with, because they're running for relaxation, but what do you think the long-term implications are on their body of running when they're already psychologically or mental, emotionally challenged going into running?
Yeah. From a coaching point of view, I would see that because when they are engaged in a physical activity, an athlete needs all his or her faculties, alert to be able to interpret all the responses that the body, the biofeedback that the body is giving them, because that's important in how fast they run, how much load they put on it. Now, if they're not able to interpret with precision the biofeedback, the feedback that the body is giving them, because there's a barrier, an emotional barrier or a mental barrier, that in itself is not a very, very healthy situation for an athlete to have. And depending on what stressors they have, those would be able to manifest themselves negatively, much sooner or even later along the line. That would happen. I think it's important that an athlete is both mentally and emotionally, aware and fresh enough to be able to interpret precisely what the body's feedback is, so that they are able to feed forward into their training, into their running, what the body's response exactly is. Otherwise, they would give wrong information even to their coach, on exactly how they are feeling and how much load they must be going on. Because the coach really, as a coach, I rely on the feedback, and the more accurate that feedback is from the athlete, the better it is for me to apply, for me to prescribe the necessary intervention, for them to move forward in their running.
Yeah, no, interesting. So nutritional deficiency. So if people are running when they're nutritionally deprived, what's the long-term effect of that then in isolation that you've seen?
It is, well, I think, the simple way of looking at that is they're asking the body to do work when the body hasn't got the fuel to carry out that work. And now, if the body hasn't got the fuel to carry out the work that is imposed on it, the body then would respond with its self-preservation first as a safety valve, as a safety measure. For a start, it will retain. It will not give them the energy that they need to perform that task. So there will be underperformance, which is almost an antithesis for why they are running in the first place. But also, if the situation continues and then they create electrolyte imbalance within their system, that starts affecting their biochemistry as well.
That's quite a common thing that we see in clinic, isn't it? So one of the common things is just as simple as calf problems. So calf problems, there's numerous people that come into the clinic and they come in complaining of tight calves, and they have massage and they given exercises, but often that's a good indicator of it's a very actively used muscle in terms of the load going through it when you're running, isn't it? So if you are having electrolyte imbalances, so sodium, potassium, chlorides, calcium to a certain extent as well, they're going to give you quite severe calf problems long term. So that's a very simple resolution for someone who's suffered for long-term calf problems and wants to get a good resolution. Go and get that checked out, get it looked at, make sure it's not something you're running on empty fuel loads, and getting this recurrent calf problem. So we see a lot of people that have spent thousands of pounds on orthotics or insoles trying to correct that. And that's a very simple thing that people can get rid of. And I know I've missed some myself in my time as an osteopath and a physical therapist, but it's something that I definitely don't miss anymore, because you've just got to be so on the ball that it's a very, very obvious thing to be able to look at very quickly. Do you see that quite a lot in high performance as well, Stan?
Indeed, you know, unless an athlete really has gone through the education to understand the importance of it, to understand the relevance, you know, of nutritional intake to their body, and are able to relate that to their performance, there will always be gaps, or there will be some, you know, indiscipline there. Maybe not deliberate indiscipline, but indiscipline emanating from lack of awareness and knowledge that this really is, you know, what they need to be, you know, taking it as serious as it is. The way I advise my athletes is treat your training, treat your recovery, treat your hydration and nutrition with the same emphasis and the same importance as you treat your training or your runs. Because without that, the runs are compromised anyway. Training is compromised anyway. Optimum training, optimum performance is in itself arrived at if there is optimum recovery. And recovery has got all those components to it, which include hydration and ensuring that the electrolyte balance is spot on. Therefore, the body is able to function, you know, optimally to meet every demand that is placed on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there other common things that you think people miss? I know sleep is a big thing, isn't it? If people athletes are running and they're not getting enough sleep, so it's a very easy thing to try and improve.
Yeah, indeed. I tell my athletes, you know, PBs, you know, personal best. There are many ways of arriving at personal best. For a start, it's not adding anything onto their training plan. From a speed point of view, I remove barriers. But for other, you know, for recovery, is just increase the recovery. They are PBs, they are personal based in you just managing your sleep patterns, taking care of your sleep. Already in there, that there's a PB in it. Why? Because you create so much resource for the body, because of the quality of sleep. The quality of sleep an athlete has had the day prior to training allows them to train, you know, that more efficiently, that more effectively, because they've got, you know, a huge amount of resource in terms of energy because of a good night's sleep that they've had. But if they did not have a good night's sleep, guess what? That whole training plan there, it doesn't matter, you know, how brilliant it might be, that whole training plan there will not be engaged full on because they don't have the resources to do that. And therefore they will not benefit from it. You know, and there are many other factors that, you know, athletes might forget. You know, lifestyle issues, all those contribute to the whole pool of what amounts to be work. Things that have got to be considered when you are planning, you know, when you're putting in a recovery plan. Somebody's job, you know, their work pattern, the working hours, all those do contribute to the load that you're putting in training. School commitments, I have to ensure that an athlete who are still, you know, in school, high school, tertiary, their school commitments are put into the plan, because that in itself is also it's a load on the body, it's a load on their mental side, it's a load on their emotional side, it's a load on their physical side. So already they're coming into training loaded, and therefore all I have to do is, you know, complement that load with the training load, but allow that to be mitigated with a proper recovery plan.
Yeah, very interesting. So there's a lot of research on breathing now, isn't there, and how valuable breathing is for athletic performance, and in particular controlling the old grey matter and what goes on up there in terms of mindfulness, in terms of like controlling anxiety, performance anxiety, stress levels. Do you see that being, do you encompass that in your work as a high performance athletics coach in terms of breathing?
Indeed, because at the elite level, what you are looking for, the gains are really very, very, very tiny. You are looking for milliseconds. Where are we going to get the next milliseconds to add to this PB?
Yeah.
It's no longer just with, from the neuromuscular, interventions. It's all these other components, all other faculties, that constitute a human being, that constitute an athlete. And so breathing is one of them because of exactly what you have pointed there, the correlation of breathing and relaxation, and the depreciation of anxiety. Because as long as there are all these other negative stresses within the mental and emotional factors, they will affect the neuromuscular system and its desired, the desired expression from it. And so it's important to learn all this. And what you do is encourage athletes, to start considering all these other interdisciplinary interventions that are necessary for them, to just get every millisecond from wherever you can get it. And breathing and relaxation is one of those. You take them to meditation, those that have got a disposition and they fancy that, they go out for this meditation classes, sign up and learn how to relax, because it's only in a state of relaxation that the muscles are fully able to express themselves. So why not do it?
Yeah, no, fantastic. Really good advice there. Really good advice. So what would you say your key teaching points are within an athletic performance session of improving recovery, or do you give homework for recovery?
For me, recovery starts within the session, because recovery is exactly that. It's not at the end of the session, it's within the micro units within the session. So that, after they've done a run, how much rest do they need? That is dependent on the type of training. It depends on the type of sport that they're in. It depends on the type or the energy system that we are dealing with at that time. Each system requires an optimal amount of recovery so that you are able to, be able to, so that the body is available for the next task, whether it's within a set or within the training unit, as a whole. So once you have inculcated the culture of recovery, and what I do with young athletes, youth athletes, young elite, is I like you to bring a timer, deliberately get a timer, and I like to hear it loud. You are punching in 3 minutes for your recovery, punch it in. And I like to hear that alarm going, then they know it's time to go for their next rep. After a while, that becomes something that is within their consciousness. And therefore, it's a habit that they pick up early, before they get into the senior ranks, to understand and appreciate recovery. Outside of the session, you want recovery to be planned in within the week, or is it within the, depending on what cycles you are using, but there is a week of recovery in itself. It might be active recovery, where they continue with activity, but of a low intensity. The volume is dropped down. Volume as in the amount of work they're doing, that is dropped down. Maybe the intensity is dropped down as well, depending what time of the season that is. And then, of course, there is a period of recovery, which is called the off season. When you've done with the major competitions for that season, there's a period there, 6-8 weeks of complete recovery or part complete recovery, so that the body is able to recycle itself, if you like, so that is there. But what you also find is that with young athletes, as they're coming in, it's a difficult thing for them to understand they need to recover. Young people they've finished the training, they want to go to the next physical activity. They've just finished a super duper training session. They want to go out and play with their mates, do something else. So it's about bringing them to understand that physical activity that they are going to do, even though it's not at training, it is also adding onto the training load that the body is experiencing, and therefore will affect their recovery. So on the day that you are training, probably that's not the day you want to go out and play football, you know, in the park with mates. If you are a runner, probably that's the day I've finished my training. It's time to go and take care of recovery. Go in and look at your nutrition. Young people, this is common, Steve. Young athletes, young elite athletes struggle with eating after training. For them, the reflex position there is finish training, I need to sleep. I'll wake up and then eat afterwards. Yeah. That's when you have to bring in, I have to bring in the parents or the adult others in their life and bring them to that, you know, to bring them on board support so that the recovery is structured away from the training track. So someone at home is taking care of that, ensuring there is nutrition, there's hydration, so that they are able to recover for them to go back to school the following day, you know, like a normal student, like a normal, go back to work like a normal, you know, professional, because they have fully recovered.
Yeah, no, very interesting, very interesting. So Stan, there's quite a lot of people watching online. Gemma Armagy, so that surname sounds familiar. Hi Gemma, how's it going? I think we look after your sister, but I could be wrong. She's one of our high performance athletes at the club, at the clinic even. I don't even know what it's called. We've been out of the clinic for so long, I've forgotten what it's called. But listen, if you've got particular questions about recovery, then Stan's your man. And we can let you know about some of the really cool stuff that we've got going on in the clinic to help you with your performance as a runner. But Stan, just to leave the people who are watching on Facebook, and if you're watching this as a replay, then just put hashtag replay and we'll cycle back and come and speak to you about some of the questions that you might have. But Stan, what would you say the top 3 tips are for helping people with their running performance related to recovery and not get more sleep?
Yeah, I think, you know, they would fall in the breadth of all that I've said, but I could, you know, pick out 3 there. The first one is during the session. Recover during the session and do that by rehydrating. It's a simple one. Do rehydrate. It's not a social status thing. No, it is a physiological need. So rehydrate, you know, during the session to do that. The next one is refuel. Okay, consider your nutrition there as an, you know, as an athlete, as a runner. Your nutrition is no longer just any other type of eating. It's a nutrition culture that has to support the nature of your training, the nature of your lifestyle, which is training and the competition. And that it looks very, very different from somebody else that is not involved in training and competition.
Yeah.
And the last one is rebuild your body. Physical, look for strategies that work well with your body to rebuild it. Why rebuild, Stan? Because every time we are training, we are breaking down the body. We are breaking it down. And so we have to deliberately embark on a rebuilding strategy, whether it's you're doing that with, you know, with foam rollers, whether you're doing that with the professionals that are going in for a massage, whether you are using, you know, cold water compress, or you are doing alternate temperature recoveries, whatever it is that you need, do something to rebuild the body. Do not leave the body to rebuild itself. That tends, 1, to take too long. 2, that's when we have a lot of DOMS, you know, delayed onset of muscle fatigue, because we've just left the waste, you know, in the body without, when we can do something about it. So those 3, you know, refuel and rebuild the body. Those 3 tips there for you.
No, it's good. It's very good. Excellent. Stan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We've got a lineup next week, haven't we? So what have we got on next week?
Yes, next week we're talking the interesting topic of running shoes.
Running shoes, very interesting.
Yes, yes. You know, runners have, you know, an interesting relationship with running shoes.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So, yeah, that could be very interesting actually. So, what do you think the top considerations are with running shoes? Just to leave people with a bit of a teaser for next week.
Yeah, and I think the one that would be here is, you know, there are lots of messages out there regarding running shoes, and there are lots of considerations there. Others look for running shoes because they are looking for the new PB, you know, a new personal best in their running. Others are looking for shoes because it is for health and safety reasons. Maybe usually those are the crowd that have experienced an injury, and they're looking for a particular type of shoe that they, in their consideration, would, you know, help them not re-injure themselves. Others are looking for a shoe that simply has got, the magic bullet. What is this? The shoe that is, what is the right shoe for a runner? Basically, that's what it is what is out there. If a runner, if a human being, you know, let me rephrase that here. If a human being created barefoot, able to walk and run barefoot, or our ancestors, shall we say, you know, how were they able to do that? And where does that sit with ourselves and our modern footwear? What is it that is causing so many injuries in spite of all the modern technology in terms of footwear that we have nowadays, when you think there shouldn't be any?
Yeah, so less is more.
Yeah.
You just spoiled it there. But if you want to find out a bit more about running shoes, we'd love to have you on the show. I think it's Monday, isn't it, Stan?
It's Wednesday, Steve.
Wednesday. Completely gone out of my head. Every day's the same in isolation. But Wednesday next week, so it's very exciting. So I look forward to that, Stan. We're also going to try and get Shamima, aren't we, online? Because I think she'd be great to talk about some of the mental aspects of high performance and running. So if you're into your resilience training and looking at psychology of sports, then we'd love to have you online, and we'll certainly say, if you're interested in that, just put hashtag psychology in the box below, and we would love to have you back on the show to be able to ask you some questions if you're interested in that kind of thing, or if you can see the benefit that it's going to give you in that extra percentage improvement that you're not going to get from just training alone. So Stan, she's a colleague of yours, isn't she? How do you know her?
Shamima is, you know, she comes highly recommended, and you know, she actually, I learned something from her, you know, from her discussions with her, is she looks at psychology, you know, in almost a different way, with the emphasis of performance well-being. You know, performance me that then is more than just the head matters. It's more than just the mental issues. You know, it's about the whole person.
Person.
And how the well-being of a person contributes to performance.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Let's leave it there for the guys. It's been absolutely a pleasure talking to you guys, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. My name's been Stephen McInday. I am one of the guys at Perfect Balance, and this is also Stan Madiri. He comes from Perfect Balance as well. So for tonight, it's bye-bye from me, and we will see you later. And bye-bye from Stan.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a lovely evening.
Super.